the last lecture today is actually manufacturing the smart roast that Mikael was talking about this morning, and the roaster that they have here. From the US, right? California? Yes. Is that right now? Yeah, so let's give him a round of applause, and we're ready to go.
I promised before I came here that I would not make this a sales pitch, but I did manage to get Loring worked into the title slide. Whoop. Now what did I do? Oh, I pushed the down button. Turn the camera off, please. Oh, there we go. Now I think I got it. I am helping to operate the company these days. We're located in Santa Rosa, California. I want to make a legal disclaimer right off the bat. I am not a coffee professional, unless wanting to drink a great cup of coffee every day would qualify me as a professional. I'm not a roaster. I know a little bit about it, but if somebody asked me to cup coffee, at my age, I don't have a palate left. It didn't get trained early in life, and there's no way today that I'm really going to develop the kind of the sophisticated palate that's required to do the work that you guys do every day. When I go around the room here, or when I go around the country talking to roasters, one of the things that I perceive is that your community are truly artisans. You're not scientists in the sense that you're trying to figure out the chemistry inside of each bean, but in an artistic way, you're trying to develop a product that people can enjoy. Because I live in the wine country myself, and I was thinking about this when Michael was talking about his years in the wine business. I know that there is a sensitivity that people with your abilities brings to the coffee world. It's not something that's easily duplicated. It's probably one of the reasons that a company like Starbucks does business the way they do it. They just can't find talent that can do all the things that you guys do. Your job, as I perceive it, create exciting new products and introduce them into your local communities. If you're trying to be a huge corporation, you want to have a very flat standard product. Think of McDonald's or think of Coca-Cola. But you have the opportunity in your local communities to bring products to people that get them excited at the local level and give them something different than they get when they go to a McDonald's or a Starbucks. You're dealing with a lot of variables, and those variables are things that you cannot control easily. For instance, listening to the lecture about what's going on in Ethiopia, there are things there that are way beyond the control of anybody in this room. My perception of this industry is that the people in this room are searching for better tools all the time. I don't think there's a sentiment in here that says, oh, well, we've already got the best tools, we've already got the best materials, and that's one of the things that you look for in a business that's going to continually grow, is there's an interest in finding a way to make things better and better. Personal history, I've been involved in these 4 startups. Their accumulated market capitalization is $40 billion. So most of the businesses that I've been in have been fairly large businesses. I've watched them go from little startups where an inventor had an idea, like at Sealed Air Corporation for taking 2 pieces of plastic and putting bubbles in between them and use them for packaging things. On a day when you're frustrated, you put them on the floor and you pop the bubbles. It becomes a sort of an executive's pacifier. Now I'm working with Loring. It's a very small business. It's privately held. Probably will never be a public corporation. But it's an interesting business because of people like you. One of the inspirations for what I wanted to talk to you about is what's called a product life cycle curve. Anybody in here ever heard of that term before? Couple of hands, okay. There's a life cycle curve that was first identified a long time ago by General Electric called the double humped product life cycle curve. What it says is you have a starting point for a business. There's virtually zero activity at the start. And then early adopters come in and they quickly build a business up or a marketplace up. Those early adopters are the people who get excited about anything new and they'll buy it immediately, and they don't need to be convinced by massive advertising to try something. They're very important to a marketplace like specialty coffee. Oftentimes, after a few years, you go into a period we call the slump. It's where the sales may actually tend to tail off. This is the point in time where a company like General Electric, or perhaps a company like Starbucks, takes a keen interest in what's going on in the marketplace. Because if they start to see it turn back up again, that's when they go and they buy. You'll see the massive money coming in to promote a market, to promote a product, when that second hump comes into view and there's generally acceptance of a product in a market. Again, that's when the big guys plow the money in. They buy the companies and they look to profit from a run-up in volume. This is what I see when I look at coffee. I see $50 billion, and it's probably a lot more than that, but I just can't find the data. $50 billion in beverages are sold globally each year. There's growth. There's an influx of new addicts, as I like to call them. China is beginning to buy coffee. I was just there a couple of weeks ago and had dinner in Kunming City with the mayor of Kunming. And he was telling me how excited he is about what's going to happen for coffee inside of China. This is a guy who doesn't have a particular axe to grind with this business, but he sees people ripping out tea plants and putting in coffee plants. Why are they doing this? Because demand in China is racing far ahead of where anybody thought it was going to be, and that means they're sucking in coffee that they're buying from other nations, and the Chinese tend to not want to put money back outside of their own borders. They like to keep it inside. There's a proven profit potential inside of coffee, and especially in specialty coffee. I know that there are specialty coffee companies that have come and gone out of business. But generally speaking, from what I can see, when a business is run well in this marketplace, it makes really good money. I think it's also, coffee as a whole is ripe for change. I remember when Starbucks first came on the scene, and I'm thinking, so what? But then I got caught into it like everybody else because I really do want a good cup of coffee in the morning. And what I would be buying 20 years ago at Zim's in San Francisco was lousy coffee. It was barely drinkable. I'd suffer with it because I wanted the caffeine rush or because I was with friends and we wanted to drink coffee and not beer at 8 in the morning. So it's ripe for change. Now, what do investors want out of a market? One of the most important things investors look for is this big potential. You take that $50 billion of coffee that's consumed as a beverage, and it starts out with something like 6 million tons of green coffee each year. The nexus in this business is roasting. Anybody in here not know the term nexus? Okay. Oh, okay. Think of the word neck. It's a tight point in a supply chain where a lot of money can be made if you're careful with your supply chain logistics. If you're buying smart, if you're doing a good job of processing, when you're in a nexus, you should always be able to make money. You're not in the commodity section of the market. The commodity sections are up here and down here. But in the nexus area, you've got a chance to make money. That's what impressed me with Loring, to want to put money into the business. I could look out on the horizon and I could say, I don't think specialty coffee has even laid the great foundation at this point in time. It's beginning to do that, and so that's part of what I'll talk about today is what is the foundation that's being laid and how is that going to prepare the marketplace for the future. That future marketplace is where you all will be making your money. So in addition to big potential, investors love to see big margins. Nobody wants to be in a business today where the gross margin is 20% or 25%. In manufacturing in the United States of America today, if you're a contract manufacturer, in other words, somebody comes to you with an idea for a product and you make it for them, at best, on average, you get 24% gross margin. That leaves you very little money for developing anything beyond a one-to-one customer relationship. I was talking with a couple of guys recently and I asked them, what are the two most expensive things in business today? The number one most expensive thing anybody has is cost of acquiring a new customer. That's the most expensive thing you do. And depending on how clever you are with your advertising, with your word of mouth, with your web presence, and all the other things that you can do at relatively low cost, you can probably get a customer for $50. Now, I'm not talking about the coffee business, but just businesses in general. Usually, it's thousands of dollars to acquire a new customer. The second most expensive thing you have is the cost of finding an employee who will love that customer to death and never let him go. Once you've got them, you don't want to spend more money finding another new customer. You want that new customer to go out and bring his friends into your business. Another thing that investors look for are unique answers. Intellectual property, trade secrets. Intellectual property, it just means you've got a patent on something. The good news about a patent is it gives you some protection. The bad news is you have now given the whole world a chance to look at what you're doing. That's why most people today operate with trade secrets. From what I can observe about the business that you ladies and gentlemen are in, there are some excellent trade secrets in this business. Where do you find your beans? How are you roasting them? How do you prepare the cup for the customer when they come in? One of the things that I did about 2 months ago is I spent a couple of nights in San Francisco with my wife. And I said, all we're going to do is just go to coffee shops in San Francisco. So we got to Blue Bottle, we got to Ritual Roasters, we got to 4 Barrel, Sight Glass Coffee. We saw a lot of places. They were in many ways similar, but each one had its own unique way of doing the coffee, and the results that they got were surprisingly different. I enjoyed every single one of them, but I couldn't find 2 cups that were the same between these different roasteries. Then there's the brand opportunity. If there would be one thing that I would impress upon everybody in here to do, it's to really focus hard on developing your brand. And a brand is more than a logo, it's more than a name, it's everything that is behind that. The quality of the product, the quality of the service, the intense desire to make the customer happy. And this is a quote directly out of a Starbucks annual report. This guy who's their CFO, Chief Financial Officer, said, this is third quarter fiscal year 2011. Starbucks had an amazing third quarter. Their same-store sales rose far faster than anybody thought they would. Now, that could be because they're closing a lot of stores that were underperformers, and that raises the average for the rest of them. But the bigger point here is they say it's the strength of the Starbucks brand. That has a lot of meaning. What I'm seeing in San Francisco by going to those 4 companies that I just named is they sell coffee at a significantly higher price than Starbucks. They have lines going out the door, and the people that are buying from them don't care about the big national brand. They care about their local brand. So when I saw that, it gave me significant encouragement that the businesses that you're involved in are going to continue to grow and prosper. That means everybody who's serving you will continue to grow and prosper too. One of the biggest things that investors look for is an opportunity for what's called positive cash flow. Most people I talk to understand profit, but profit and cash flow are two different things. When a company grows fast, as you probably, I hope you're all experiencing this, when a company grows fast, you run out of cash quickly. If you completely run out of cash, you're out of business, or you're going to be going to the bank or an investor and asking for more money. Now you suffer dilution, or your profits get reduced because you're paying interest on money that you're putting into your cash flow. So the ability to manage this is really tough when bean prices jump up or down, as they have been doing. And as my last statement there says, your business ends when you can't pay your bills. You can have all the hopes and dreams in the world, but if you're not managing your cash wisely, you can go out of business even when you're growing fast. Some of the hot buttons that I think of in this industry are based on this concept of from bean to cup. Fresh roasted is probably the term I hear the most in the United States. If you, anybody in here know the company called Costco? Not including Carl. Anybody know Costco? Okay. Costco has globally over 500 stores, 450 in the United States. They have 57 million members. They're a warehouse club. You join as a member. You get to go in there and buy stuff at typically 15% over whatever Costco pays for it. And they're very efficient on their purchasing. They made a commitment several years ago to being in the coffee business. And they said, well, you know, we'll bring Starbucks coffee in, and we'll bring San Francisco Bay and a bunch of other brands under the roof. And they noticed that they were getting pretty good response to that. Then they started buying roasting equipment and roasting in-house. They got up to 25 stores, and then, as you might expect, because they were not professional roasters, the almost unthinkable happened. They had stack fires. If a Costco store burns down, it doesn't matter how much profit they were making out of that coffee sector, because the value of what's inside that store when it burns down and the loss of income from having to be closed for several weeks to a couple of months just kills them, or at least it kills that store. So they cut the program off at the time, but their chief delicatessen manager said in his mind he still hears the words coming back from the members of Costco. They want fresh roasted coffee. Most of those people, when they did a local survey in the Santa Rosa store, most of those people were going to the local roasteries in our area. That would be TaylorMade Coffee, Flying Goat Coffee, a couple of other places that roast coffee and serve it to their customers fresh. And they loved getting that. So they were all experiencing fresh roasted coffee. Whole Foods is another company that's talking about putting roasters in all of their stores. They see the profitability of it. According to Costco, the profitability of coffee roasted in their store on a per square inch basis is better than several other sectors on a per square foot basis. In other words, it's 144 times more profitable to them. And it brings the customers in regularly. Another hot button issue in my mind is this whole thing about precision brewing equipment. You know, in the United States, you've got inventors always trying something new. I've seen friends of mine now putting money into odd little machines that purport to do a better job of brewing drip coffee. And again, I don't have the palate to really know if it's better, but friends of mine who do say, yeah, these machines work better. Those are the kind of things investors want to see, because you know when you're seeing that the business is going to continue to grow. And then there's the whole aspect of consumer education. Who are the evangelists out there right now trying to convert people away from poor quality coffee to the best quality coffee? It's all of you. And many more will be added to your ranks, I believe, in the coming years because the business is profitable. And as you get into this cyclical pattern where more people are beginning to experience good coffee, they're getting an education on it, they're understanding why it tastes better, and then they'll put up with paying more money for it. There's an old saying in English, a luxury once experienced becomes a necessity, and I think that's as true of great coffee as it is of great wine. Once you've tasted great wine, you don't go backwards to Gallo or Sutter Hill. You stay with the good quality. I made another note there. What percentage of the market actually needs to demand a good cup of coffee for specialty coffee as a whole to succeed? There was a point in time where I might have said, oh, 50% of the market has to say, I really want specialty coffee in order for the specialty coffee segment to prosper. I no longer think that. It's a much smaller percentage of the market. There are so many billions of people drinking coffee right now that if a few 100 million start to say, I'm not going to accept anything but good quality in my cup, that assures you of a strong future and a growing future. There are some threats to your business, and as an investor, I'm aware of those threats, or at least I want to be aware. Carl, you might remember the Hunt brothers in silver. Too young. Okay. Well, the Hunt brothers were two brothers from a very, very rich family. And back in the 1970s, they tried to corner the silver market. And they drove the price of silver just stratospherically. It went up higher than anybody could have ever believed. And it was because these guys were buying it, and suddenly it became, people began to think, oh, it's a scarce commodity. I don't know if that's possible inside of specialty coffee, that any one person can control it. But I can tell you that inside China right now is a company called Hogood Coffee, and it's owned by a farmer, and that farmer controls 90% of the coffee crop in Yunnan province, which is the heart of their coffee-grown region. When you have one guy with that much control, he can wreak havoc in a marketplace, especially if he makes the mistake especially if he makes mistakes in his judgment about how to price his coffee. Then there's something I call Ethiopia's bean soup. This is this whole aspect of traceability. In terms of a threat to the business, I look at this myself as a viable threat. You need to buy good quality, and you're depending somewhat on traceability to be able to do that. If you can't trace it, how do you know what you got? It's my understanding right now, Simo, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's like 90,000 growers, and 20,000 are now part of this exchange. More? But 90,000 groups of sellers? Well, whatever the numbers are, in my mind as an investor, the thing that I fear is what happens if a significant coffee growing area like Ethiopia suddenly starts mixing stuff up into what I call a bean soup. You don't know what you got. And from day to day, week to week, things will change, usually negatively. And then there's that whole issue of global warming and reduced production. I had never thought of that as an investor until I was in Bogota for WBC in June. And I spent some time with a guy that I think some of you may know, Luis Velez. And Luis was telling me, yeah, it's sad. As the temperature rises up, people are moving a little further up the mountains. As they move further up the mountains, it's shaped like a triangle. You've got less arable land. So the quality over a protracted period of time will go down. What's that going to do to coffee as a whole globally? I don't have an answer, but as an investor, I look at those kind of things and I say, well, maybe I need to be hedging my bets a little more in this marketplace because of that particular threat. Then there's this whole issue of getting money to be able to buy anything, whether you're buying beans, buying roasters, hiring new people, expanding your facility, renting a new place. If you can't get money easily, it throttles your opportunities. So I don't know what the answer is going to be in this marketplace for that. I know that at Loring we are carefully looking at the idea of becoming our own leasing broker. And that's, for a company as small as Loring, it's virtually unthinkable that you would do that. But it may be a strategy we have to entertain in this marketplace. Certainly in the United States today, unless you are a AAA credit rating, which means as a coffee roaster, you're in business for minimum 3 years, you have minimum 3 years positive cash flow, and you've already borrowed a lot of money and you've paid it back, so you have this credit history. If you don't have those three things and you want to go and borrow, say, $250,000 to make an improvement, and you're a small company, you're doing a couple $1,000,000 a year, it's very hard to get that money. I never thought I would see it as difficult as it is today. There's California's cancer concern. You probably are all aware that in the United States there's a Surgeon General's warning printed on the pack, every pack of cigarettes that's sold. You know, warning, use of this product may impair your health and cause cancer. Well, they're now talking about putting that on coffee because there is a known carcinogenic material given off when coffee is roasted, and it stays in the coffee when it's brewed. It's in parts per billion, but it can cause cancer. And in the state of California, there is a drive to actually publish onto, you'd put a warning up in your coffee shop. Customers coming in, there's a warning that says, hey, there are cancer-causing agents in this store. I don't worry about it because when I go to get the oil changed in my car, there's a big sign right there that says cancer-causing materials are used here. I'm not consuming them. But of course it's different with coffee because you would be consuming it. And then there's another more global issue that as an investor I think about, and that's worker health care. One of the other companies that I have money invested into today is involved in a global market called ergonomics, where we study how people get their work done, and we try to provide tools that reduce the physical stresses and oftentimes the mental stresses of doing their work. When I look at how coffee is picked, when I talk to people at the University of Washington, just outside of Seattle, where they have ergonomists studying what goes on with coffee pickers, as they try to improve their lives, they're going to work harder. But they're working harder with incorrect tools, and those incorrect tools are causing them to flame out much earlier in life than you'd expect them to. There's the issue of cervical cancer among the women that work in the coffee-producing regions. I went to the Loring board and said, I want to give 10% of our profits for a period of time into this whole area of cervical cancer for women. I think it's the right thing to do, and as a company that makes its living on the success of specialty coffee, we got to make sure that there are people who know how to pick coffee and they stay healthy for a long enough period of time that the next generation of workers comes along behind them. This is something I'm concerned about. It won't affect my business tomorrow morning, but it could affect it 5, 10, 20 years down the road. One of the most promising signs that I see in this industry in terms of something that says there's going to be continued success, it's this whole attitude that I've seen here. Be, act, learn together. If you look at almost any major marketplace in the world today, when there's no guild, when there's no association, when there's nobody pulling information together to raise the bar for everybody in the industry, generally that industry does not do well. Standards and performance are driven by people who bring together information and say, geez, you know, if the water was 98 instead of 96, you're going to get a better draw out of that bean. I don't know anybody in my peer group that has any understanding of this stuff. But when I see an industry like yours coming together with associations like you folks have, I realize there's the opportunity now for great information to be put together that helps everybody in the market. And I made a note here, politics aside, I'm sure there's politics in your organizations like there are in all others. As much as possible, you lay aside the politics and you make the organizations work. It's kind of like when you're choosing up sides for a baseball game. You may not like everybody that's on your team, but if you act as a team, you can win a game. If you act as a team time after time, you could be like the San Francisco 49er football team in the 1980s. They won 5 times out of 10. They won the national championship. Great teamwork from parties who are not necessarily, you know, intimate with each other in terms of supporting every idea that you come up with. Those collaborations make things happen in a wonderful way. Another promising sign are the big players who are out there educating the market. Starbucks marketing is more than $2 billion a year. That's a lot of money that gets spent on advertising, brand awareness, creating favorable impressions, and I think that that advertising in several ways can help specialty coffee. It causes people to rethink what they're doing. I was surprised to learn that McDonald's, when they decided they were going to relaunch their coffee brand, that they spent $100 million in 1 year, in 2009, to really begin to try and push its way into not specialty coffee, but higher quality coffee. So when you see those kind of numbers coming out of these big companies, it tells me as a little guy, there's opportunity here for all the small players. And then, as I was mentioning earlier, the professional organizations that create the standards, every time this happens, quality and consistency go up within an industry. And the real market leaders, the guys who are passionate about what they're doing, for example, who go to the farms or take time to really learn about what's going on at the crop level, those people will bring their information back into their company and make improvements that lift the whole industry up. The supply chain will change to meet the demands of the market. When I think of the supply chain, I think of the bean growers. What are we going to do to help them do a better job at their level? Certainly, putting more money back in their pocket is one of the things that's going to help them move their game up to a higher level. You can't starve the guy at the farm and expect him to perform well. The more economic opportunity he senses for himself and his family, the more he'll work hard for you to bring you good beans. Roaster equipment manufacturers. In my friendly relationship to Probat, when I was there a couple of weeks ago, I was thrilled to see that they've broken ground for a new research and development center. They're going to put money into trying to improve everything that they do. And that just drives the industry further. They're the big cat in the jungle. When they start to do that, everybody is going to be pushed up while they're doing their work. And then brewing equipment manufacturers. I just came back from Host. Again, I'm not a professional coffee guy. I had no idea how many people are out there making espresso machines and how significant the differences actually can be between them. If I knew how to operate one, maybe I'd say it's not that much. But when I was sampling the coffees around the show, I was surprised how good some were and how bad some were. I see these guys continuing to make their investments, trying to pull the industry along. As a side note on this whole thing about brand, building a brand, I think one of the biggest dangers that I've seen in the specialty coffee marketplace is a company, for example, Blue Bottle in San Francisco began selling to some cafes and restaurants that prominently advertised, as soon as you walked in, we serve Blue Bottle. And then they did a crap job of making that coffee. And people said, this stuff tastes like, and I won't use the S word, but it tasted terrible. Well, what does that do to Blue Bottle? It really hurts their reputation. What did Blue Bottle do? They went to those cafes and ripped out their equipment and took their product away. As much as they want to make a sale, if you can't get a customer to treat your product right, you have to make that hard decision. I'm going to pull out. I need to protect my brand. Again, think back to Starbucks. What's the most powerful thing you invest into? It's not a new car or anything like that. It's the building of your brand, and that depends on the quality throughout that supply chain from the bean to the cup. So just some quick words of wisdom. These are not mine. These are words that I've picked up from other people. One, coffee has been countercyclical. That means when the economy is rotten, as a percentage out of their pocketbook, people actually spend more money on coffee and less money on booze. When times are good, people tend to spend more money on booze, but they don't spend anything less on their coffee. That's good news if you're in this business. Another guy said, great coffee is only in its infancy. Some people in America think, well, Starbucks, that's it. That's the end of the road. We've reached nirvana. And then they go to a place like Sight Glass Coffee, and they taste a Yirgacheffe that's done right, and they're amazed by what they taste when they get there. So this industry truly is only in its infancy. Specialization is being seen in one industry after another. The idea of Henry Ford, you know, build one car and sell it to everybody, you know, any color you want, Mrs. Jones, as long as it's black, was a common American saying. But now that's not what people accept. Generally, people want things the way they want it. So you're going to see further subdivision even within specialty coffee. When I walked into Blue Bottle Cafe for the first time a couple of years ago, they had espresso machines. Now you walk in and they've got these little scales with the flask on top and the automatic weighing, and they're dosing the coffee just right, and they're doing a pour over. Well, that's a big change. I didn't expect to see that. And all their competitors now have the same thing. At Four Barrel Coffee on Valencia Street, which is a wonderful location in San Francisco to have a specialty coffee shop, you walk in and straight ahead is the espresso bar, and to the left is the brew bar. And the brew bar has people standing 10 deep, and the espresso bar's got 2 or 3 people standing there waiting for their lattes. They're making a difference with that whole idea of serving the coffee one at a time to people. I'll make another note here, a comment from the Costco manager. The guy who is responsible for the Costco coffee program is a young guy named Sean McInerney. I'm guessing Sean is at most he's 35. And he told me over dinner one night when we were visiting, he said, you know, I'm seriously thinking of leaving Costco. For all the safety that I get, for the great salary and the great benefits, I'm thinking of leaving it. I want to go into specialty coffee. Why would a guy with a 6-figure salary take that kind of a risk? Now, he hasn't done it yet, but he says, when I look at what's going on out there and I look at this continual specialization, I think there's significant money in the future, and I want to be part of that. And typical of young guys his age, they don't want to work for some schmuck like me and have to show up on time. They want to do it because they want to do it, not because some guy in a corporate office tells them that's what you've got to do. So what's Loring's role in this marketplace? One, we've got to get closer to the market, understand its needs. Not only am I not a roaster myself, but the guy who invented the system is allergic to coffee. He can't be in the room when green coffee is being elevated because the small amount of dust that comes out of it makes him sneeze like crazy. And he doesn't drink coffee. So while there's a passion in the company to serve the specialty coffee community, nobody in the company today really has the smarts to be able to say, tune it this way and not that way, you're going to get a better result. So we're going to try to get closer to what we call the movers and shakers, which is you people right here in this room. This is ground zero for specialty coffee. Our opportunity to get in front of you, to try and listen to what your needs are, and position ourselves to serve you is part of why I'm here today. We're going to continually improve our technology. As I mentioned earlier, Probat's building a whole new R&D center. We have to stay as nimble afoot as we can to have any position in this marketplace. That little bullet down there, as beans change and consumer tastes change, can we provide you with tools that enable you to do what you want with your beans? We think we've got a good answer today, but certainly not a perfect answer. And we want to do things to help reduce the threats to this business sector, whether it's global warming or improving the yield of an increasingly precious commodity that's being demanded by more and more people around the world, or taking care of the health care for the workers. We want to be participating in that in every way that we can. I'll just do a quick pitch on my product. We named our invention Flavor Lock Roast Process. The reason we did is because when you're in a Loring roaster, there's no tipping or scorching. We're not heating up the steel, we're heating up the air. So you drop the beans and you don't tip them and scorch them. You get even heating during the roasting process, and the airflow remains unimpeded. There was discussion earlier about cleaning. In a Loring roaster, the oldest known one is TaylorMade Coffee. It's been installed for almost 7 years. They took the entire system apart about a year ago, so 6 years of use. There was nothing in the stack. The state of California sent an engineering team to take stack measurements, and they thought they were measuring the wrong stack because there was nothing in it. Same thing in the drum. You'll get a little bit of buildup on the paddles, but that tends to break off. Another thing that's important, stack fires are virtually impossible. Nothing's building up in the stack. You're not going to have a stack fire. It's like a self-cleaning oven in that respect. Closed loop atmosphere, that simply means there's near zero oxygen when you're roasting the coffee. I use this when I pitch people in the Midwest who tend not to be too hip on chemistry or coffee. I just say, if it's true that oxygen is the enemy of coffee's flavor, how much more true is it when oxygen is at 500 degrees to 600 degrees Fahrenheit, when it's hyperactive? We have higher humidity in our roasting chamber because it's a closed loop, and we have reduced seasonal effect. Winter, spring, summer, fall, you can ask a guy like George Howell and he'd tell you it makes virtually no difference roasting in a Loring because it's a pressurized closed loop. Rapid cooling, typical in a Loring, you get cooling in less than 4 minutes. You do have to keep your cooling ducting clean, but it's built in a way that makes it very easy to do that. So we tell people, if you're going to buy an expensive roaster, make sure that it's free. First, it should be free of smoke. Second, free of odor. Third, scorch-free, no tipping of the beans. Fourth, risk-free, and by that I mean the risk of a fire. If you're going to put an installation in downtown, you don't want to suddenly have a stack fire. Hassle-free, which means you get consistent results, and, well, almost cost-free. Now, the reason I put the word Panda down there is when I was in Italy last week driving a little Panda, I was absolutely stunned by the miles per gallon. Or as I told my wife when I called her on the phone, the smiles per gallon. You guys pay so much money for gas. To me, it's almost unimaginable. What would happen in the United States if suddenly it went to like $8 to $10 a gallon? You'd probably have people jumping off of buildings over that. Sorry? Or driving pandas, right. Well, we're going to get close someday. we have several customers now that have come back to us and said that they've totaled up all their savings between energy savings, the efficiency of the roaster, how much more they can get done each day with it, that their total savings, in one case with a guy that did 150 tons per year, he was saving over $30,000. The least cost to him for a new roaster is less than $2,000 a month. So he's earning $2,500 extra. He'd be spending about $2,000 of that. That means from minute one, he's making more profit. That won't be the same for everybody. But for this one customer at 150 tons, that's the results of his roasting. So thank you. Did I cover everybody's language in that? What? Whoops. How do you say it? I'm a second olive? Sign me up. I'll do my best to answer any questions you have. Thank you. Hopefully nobody brought any tomatoes.
What causes cervical cancer in women?
Our latest investor is a guy named Dr. Mel Gurney. If Mel were here instead of me, he could answer that. I can't. But this is the thing that absolutely stunned me about this whole issue of cervical cancer. Do you know that with a simple wipe with vinegar, you can see the cancer? It's that simple. The training is very easy. You don't have to be an MD to do it. And so we're planning to support an organization called Grounds for Change because they're educating the local people to take care of this problem on their own. And once you see it, if you catch it early enough, it's very easy to take care of it.
But is there a relationship between coffee and cervical cancer?
No. No. No, it's not because they're working with coffee. It's because they're in an area where there's very little education. And cleanliness is an issue. Any other questions?
What's the next step in roasting? What's the next step in that roasting?
For us, is to try and correctly understand whether there is a significant difference between applying our technology in a drum versus a fluidized bed. We're now shipping fluidized bed systems in a 15 kilo, and when we had experts come in and cup coffee side by side between the two, they could not perceive a difference. But that doesn't mean that in the general community that's going to be true. So we're trying to figure that out. Fluidized beds have some advantages and some disadvantages. They're less expensive to build. That's an advantage. In terms of some of the, I'm not going to give you my trade secrets today, especially with Arno sitting in the audience, but we're studying the chemistry of the coffee. We think next year we're going to have the money to pay a research university to do some true chemistry study, and we're going to try to figure out if there's call it a fuel injection system that we can apply to our roaster that will enhance the cleanliness of the coffee coming out. I think, if I was going to say something to you today, it's as a professional investor, I've made a lot of money in my life picking the right horses in the race. I think that specialty coffee has a tremendous future. And I'm not saying that because I want to sell you roasters. I'm saying it because I'm hoping that one of my two boys will get into specialty coffee. The older one has a real talent for this kind of stuff. And like all of you, he's very personable. He loves people. He gets along well with others. So I'm telling him, this is an area where I think the growth is going to come for years to come. And people will there'll be pressures against your profits, but the smart ones will succeed and will make good money. That's it. Thank you.